Podcast Talk.
Learn English naturally.
Talk about daily life. You know what's strange, Jake? We spend most of our lives talking about big goals and big dreams, but almost never talk about the small things that actually shape our days. The mornings when we feel tired for no reason. The moments when we feel busy but not productive. The conversations we repeat every day without thinking. And somehow, those small daily moments decide how we feel about our entire life. Not the big events, just the everyday routine we slowly get used to.
Yeah, that's so true. People always ask, what do you want to achieve this year? But nobody asks, how do you actually spend your normal day? Because if your daily life feels heavy, boring, or empty, no big goal will fix that. You can travel, change jobs, start new projects. But if your everyday routine stays the same, you'll still feel the same inside. I think daily life is where most people quietly lose motivation.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, when people say they're unhappy, they often don't have a clear reason. Nothing dramatic happened, no big problems. Just this constant feeling of, is this really it? Wake up, check your phone, work, eat, scroll, sleep, repeat. And after a while, days stop feeling different. They blend together. And that's when life feels shorter than it actually is.
I feel that. Sometimes I finish a whole week and can't remember a single moment from it. Not because it was bad, but because nothing stood out. No real conversations, no moments of presence, just tasks, screens, notifications, and noise. And then people wonder why they feel tired all the time. It's not physical tiredness, it's mental repetition.
Yes, and I think that's why talking about daily life matters so much. Because change doesn't start with a new identity, it starts with noticing small habits. How you begin your morning, how often you're distracted, how much of your day you actually choose, and how much just happens to you. Daily life is not background, it's the main story.
You know, Emma, something I realized recently is that most people don't actually live their days. They survive them. They rush through mornings. They eat without tasting. They listen without hearing. They talk without really saying anything. And then they wonder why they feel disconnected from themselves. It's like we're always preparing for some future version of life, but we never arrive in the present one. I think daily life becomes exhausting, not because it's hard, but because we're mentally somewhere else all the time.
That's such a good way to describe it. I noticed it with myself when I tried to remember what I actually enjoyed during the day. Not what I did, but what I truly felt. And most of the time, I couldn't answer because my mind was always jumping to the next thing, next message, next plan, next problem. And I realized I wasn't bored with life. I was bored with how disconnected I was from it, like I was living through a screen instead of through my own experience.
You know, Emma, I used to believe that in order to feel alive, I needed something big to happen. A new job, a new relationship, a new city. Some kind of external change that would suddenly make everything exciting again. Uh, But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that even when I changed things, the feeling didn't really last. The place was new, but my habits were the same. The people were different, but my thoughts were still familiar. And that's when I understood something uncomfortable. It's not my life that feels repetitive. It's the way I experience it. Because if you don't change your attention, no new environment will save you from feeling empty.
That's so true. I remember moving to a new apartment and thinking, this is it. This will feel like a fresh start. And for a few weeks, everything felt exciting. The streets, the cafes, the view from the window. But then slowly, without noticing, I started living the same way again. Same routines, same distractions, same mental noise. And I realized the problem wasn't where I lived. It was how little I was present in my own life. I wasn't experiencing my days, I was just passing through them.
And I think that's what people don't talk about enough. We think boredom means lack of opportunities, but often it means lack of awareness. You can live in an interesting city and still feel empty. You can have a busy schedule and still feel meaningless because stimulation and fulfillment are not the same thing. One keeps your mind occupied, the other makes you feel connected. And daily life feels heavy when it's full of noise but empty of meaning. When everything is happening, but nothing is being felt.
Exactly. And what scares me is how normal this has become, being constantly distracted, always half present, always thinking about something else. We eat while scrolling, we talk while checking messages, we rest while feeling guilty, and then we wonder why nothing feels real. I think daily life loses its magic not because it's boring, but because we're rarely fully inside it. We're physically here, but mentally somewhere else. And that creates this quiet feeling of dissatisfaction that people can't even explain.
Yeah, and the worst part is that it feels subtle. There's no crisis, no clear problem, just this low level emptiness, like something is missing, but you don't know what. And because it's not dramatic, people ignore it. They tell themselves, this is normal. Everyone feels like this. But I don't think it's normal. And I think it's common. And there's a big difference because common doesn't mean healthy. It just means many people are living disconnected from themselves at the same time.
That line is so important. A common doesn't mean healthy. I feel like so many people are emotionally exhausted, but they don't know why. They think they need more sleep, more motivation, more discipline, but what they really need is more meaning, more presence, more moments where they feel like I'm actually living my life, not just managing it. Daily life shouldn't feel like something you have to survive. It should feel like something you participate in, even in small, ordinary moments.
You know what I find interesting, Emma? Most people don't remember their days, but they remember how their days made them feel. And if most days feel rushed, empty, or repetitive, that emotional memory becomes your whole life story. Not the events, not the achievements, just a general feeling of being tired and disconnected. And the scary part is, you can live like that for years without noticing. Because nothing is wrong enough to stop. You just slowly adapt to emotional numbness and call it adulthood.
Yes, and people often confuse that numbness with stability. They think, I'm not suffering, so I must be fine. But not suffering is not the same as feeling alive. I think many people are emotionally bored, but socially busy. Their calendars are full, their minds are tired, but their hearts feel quiet, and they don't know what to do with that silence, so they fill it with noise, work, content, conversations, plans, anything to avoid listening to themselves.
That's such a real point. I noticed that when I finally had a free time, I didn't know what to do with it. Not because I was lazy, but because I was uncomfortable being alone with my thoughts. I needed background noise, music, videos, messages, something to distract me from myself, and that made me realize something uncomfortable. If silence feels scary, it means there's something inside you've been avoiding. Daily life becomes exhausting not because it's full, but because we're constantly running from ourselves.
Exactly. And I think that's why so many people feel lost, even when their life looks successful. Good job, nice apartment, social life. Everything in paper is okay. But internally, they feel like they're watching their own life instead of living it. Like they're a character in a routine they didn't consciously choose. And the moment you realize that, it's both terrifying and freeing because you understand nothing needs to collapse for you to change. You're allowed to choose differently just because you want to feel more real.
That's actually one of the most powerful ideas. We don't need a crisis to deserve change. We don't need burnout, heartbreak, or failure to justify listening to ourselves. Feeling disconnected is already enough information. Feeling bored is already a message. Feeling numb is already a signal. Daily life talks to us constantly, but in a very quiet language. Not screaming, just repeating the same feeling until we finally pay attention.
And maybe that's the real skill people need to learn. Not productivity, not discipline, but awareness. Being able to notice how you actually feel without immediately judging it or ignoring it. Because once you become aware, daily life changes naturally. You start making small choices, saying no more often, resting without guilt, listening without multitasking. And suddenly, life doesn't feel bigger, but it feels deeper. And that depth is what people are really searching for.
You know what's strange, Emma? People think awareness will make life heavier, like noticing things will make you more anxious. But for me, it did the opposite. When I started paying attention to how I actually felt during the day, I stopped blaming myself so much. I realized I wasn't lazy. I wasn't broken. I was just overwhelmed by things that didn't really matter to me. Meetings I didn't care about, conversations that felt forced, goals that weren't even mine. And once I noticed that, I felt lighter. Because instead of asking, what's wrong with me, I started asking, what in my life doesn't fit me anymore?
That question changes everything because it shifts the focus from self criticism to self respect. I remember thinking I needed to fix myself, be more motivated, more positive, more disciplined. But the real problem wasn't my personality, it was my environment. The expectations I accepted without questioning, the roles I played without choosing. And when I stopped trying to become better and started trying to become honest, daily life felt softer, less like a performance, more like a conversation with myself.
Yeah, and honesty is uncomfortable at first because it forces you to admit things you avoided. Like, I don't actually enjoy this job, or this relationship doesn't feel real anymore. Or I'm living someone else's version of success. Those thoughts are scary because they threaten your identity, but ignoring them is scarier in the long run because then you stay in situations that slowly drain you and you call it responsibility. But responsibility without meaning just becomes quiet self neglect.
That's such an important distinction. Responsibility versus self neglect. So many people confuse them. They think being tired all the time is normal. That emotional exhaustion is just adulthood. But I don't think life is supposed to feel like constant effort. Effort is part of growth, yes, but constant heaviness is not. Daily life should feel balanced. Sometimes challenging, sometimes calm, but not permanently overwhelming. And if it is, that's not weakness. That's information.
Exactly. And I think that's where people get stuck. They ignore the information their emotions give them. They numb it with distractions. Work more, scroll more, plan more. But emotions don't disappear, they just get quieter and quieter until one day you wake up feeling disconnected from everything and you don't know why. But the reason was always there in small signals and daily discomfort and that subtle feeling of, this life looks okay, but it doesn't feel like mine.
And that feeling is so universal. Almost everyone I talk to has felt it at some point. That quiet moment in the evening when everything slows down and you suddenly feel empty for no clear reason. Not sad, not depressed, just distant from yourself, from your choices, from your own story. And I think daily life feels hard, not because it's objectively difficult, but because we're disconnected from meaning. We're moving a lot, but not in a direction we consciously chose.
You know, Emma, I think one of the biggest problems with modern daily life is that it teaches us to ignore our own signals. We learn to push through tiredness. We learn to stay polite instead of honest. We learn to say, I'm fine, even when we're not. And over time, we lose the ability to read ourselves. We don't notice when we're stressed. We don't notice when we're bored. We all don't notice when we're unhappy. We only notice when everything becomes too much. But by then, the disconnect has been there for a long time. Daily life doesn't suddenly break you. It slowly teaches you to stop listening.
That's such a powerful way to say it. Stop listening. I think many people are actually very sensitive, but they trained themselves to become numb because sensitivity feels inconvenient. It makes you question things, it makes you uncomfortable, it makes you change. So instead, people choose comfort, familiar routines, predictable emotions, safe identities, and they call that stability. But deep inside, something feels missing. Not dramatic, just this quiet feeling of, I'm not fully here. And that feeling doesn't go away by itself. It waits.
And what's interesting, Emma, is that when people finally feel this inner discomfort, they often think something is wrong with them. They start Googling motivation, watching productivity videos, reading self-help books, trying to fix themselves. But very rarely do they ask the most simple question: does my daily life actually reflect who I am right now? Because life changes, but routines stay. And after a while, you're not living your current values, you're living your past decisions. Old goals, old identities, old fears. And the gap between who you are and how you live is what creates that quiet exhaustion. Not laziness, not lack of discipline, just misalignment.
Yes, and that misalignment is so hard to notice because it doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up as boredom, as low energy, as feeling emotionally flat. You don't wake up and say, my life is wrong. You wake up and say, I don't know what's wrong, but something feels off. And people ignore that feeling for years because it's not dramatic enough. They think change should come from pain, from crisis, from loss. But sometimes change comes from honesty, from admitting, I'm not unhappy, but I'm not truly alive either. And that's a very uncomfortable truth to face.
That's such a powerful point. We expect transformation to be dramatic, but real change is usually quiet. It's the moment you stop rushing your mornings, the moment you choose silence instead of noise, the moment you say no without explaining, the moment you listen to your body instead of your schedule. Those moments don't look impressive. Nobody claps, nobody notices. But inside, something shifts. You feel a little more grounded, a little more present, a little more connected to yourself. And slowly, daily life stops feeling like something you survive and starts feeling like something you consciously create.
And I think that's the real definition of growth. Not becoming someone else, not chasing a new identity, but returning to yourself again and again through small choices, through awareness, through listening, because life doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for presence. And if you're present in your own daily experience, you don't need to escape your life anymore. You don't need to constantly search for something better. You start noticing that meaning isn't waiting somewhere in the future. It's already here in how you live today, in how you feel right now. And that's probably the most important place anyone can return to.
And I think this is a good place to pause. Because if you're listening to this and something felt familiar, that's probably not a coincidence. It means you're paying attention. And that's already a big step. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and being part of these conversations. This is OffScript English, and we really love creating these episodes for people who want to learn English through real life, not textbooks. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what topics you'd like us to talk about next. We read everything, and your ideas really shape what we create here. See you in the next episode. And take care of your daily life. It's more important than you think.